ended up taking a job with Mr. Beast, one of the biggest solo YouTubers. I'm getting like tingles just talking about it. It really just reinvigorated me whenever I went there and I was working with data and being able to work with everybody else and seeing how excited they were on the team. Prior to that experience, everything involved in my channel was me doing every single aspect, and I took pride in it. And I was like, well, I can't put something out unless it's coming directly from me and I ideated and I generated it. And that also led to a lot of burnout and a lot of frustration. The ROI of having other people around me, one, motivating me and keeping me to a schedule is like one benefit, but the second is I get to actually make more content and actually please the audience.
I've talked in past episodes about how I'm using ChatGPT, but I'm interested in your experience, especially someone who I think is pretty aggressive early adopter.
I could not have built that app if I did not have the help of that. If I would have had Google, I maybe would have figured it out, but it would have taken me like a year to figure it out. With that thing, I was able to code this thing in a month of something I've never done before.
This episode of Ken's Nearest Neighbors is powered by Z by HP, HP's high compute, workstation-grade line of products and solutions. Today's guest, Luke Barousse, needs no introduction. He's one of the most well-known data analytics content creators on YouTube. He's also one of my very good friends. He creates excellent, beautiful, well-curated content and educational content, again, in this data analytics space. In today's episode, we're going to touch on a couple things. First, we're going to talk about what he's been doing since I last saw him. He went and took a job after being a full-time content creator, and then he went back to being a content creator. So we'll learn about his journey there, why he decided to take some time to work for someone else, and then why he went back. We'll also touch on the advancements in AI, what he thinks of Gemini, what he thinks of a lot of these advancements, and where he expects them to go in the future. And finally, we talk about how Luke is using AI in his own life. We also talk about the awesome course that he created to help people integrate AI with their data analytics work. So stay tuned. We've got a lot of really great and interesting stuff for you today, and I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Luke Barousse, welcome back to the Ken's Nearest Neighbors podcast. It has been way too long.
Way too long. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, I always love chatting with you. I mean, something people probably don't know is we have a monthly one-on-one where we just catch up, talk YouTube, talk life, and I was thinking it's way past due for you to come on and talk about some of the things you're interested in, what sort of changes have gone with you've undergone with your life and content, and what better place to do that than here. I think some very interesting things have happened since we last talked, I think, which was more than a year ago.
Yeah.
And I know that I gained tremendous benefit from learning the lessons from all the things you'd experienced over the last couple of months. So I'd love to start off with, what have you been up to over the last year? What's changed? What's stayed the same?
Yeah, so a lot has changed since we last talked. I think the last time we were on the podcast was with our friend Alex Freeberg, Alex the Analyst. Shout out to him. And
your mortal enemy.
my arch nemesis. No, my arch nemesis is actually Albert Bellamy. Me and Alex are actually good friends. But last time since we talked, oh my gosh, so much changed. So obviously still doing the YouTube thing. I did have some ups and downs with it. Especially those subscribers that are subscribed to my channel and keep a track of my content, had a bit of a dip in content earlier this year because I ended up taking a job with Mr. Beast, one of the biggest solo YouTubers in the world. He's growing phenomenally right now. And the team over at Mr. Beast reached out to me and asked if I wanted to come help out with data analytics. And I love content creation and I love data. So it was like, heck, I want to give it a try. Sure. So I had a 3-month trial with them to go test it out and work with them. We can obviously get into it more, but I worked with them for a little bit, but had to scale back onto the content during that time. And all of this was during when ChatGPT is getting released and coming out. We have all this AI news. So a lot of things changed. And then afterwards, I ended up deciding not to go in further with a full career there. And so, yeah, now it's been the past few months making a course and getting back into ramping up the YouTube content because I love making YouTube videos.
I love that. That's one of my favorite things about you is how passionate you are about making YouTube videos, getting all the details right, telling a really good story. So I'm interested in the origin story there is what, what were the factors that made you really want to go and do that? And what were some of the factors that were nagging at you that were telling you maybe don't pursue this opportunity as well? I know even though it sounds like an amazing opportunity that's a great fit, it's never that simple. And I'm
Right.
interested into your thought process or what went into your decision making around taking a job, which, we both said, hey, we don't want to work for other people maybe
Right.
ever again.
Uh-huh.
But there's always exceptions to every rule.
Yeah. So that's a great question, Ken. I don't know if I was prepared for that one. That goes actually pretty deep. So in general, I can make a living off of YouTube. I live in Arkansas. It's like one of the cheapest places to live in America. So I'm fortunate enough for that to live here. So YouTube pays the bills. And I wasn't really looking for a job per se. And they reached out to me, and I was like, "What?" Well, I mean, like we talked about, I don't know if I don't want to really work for somebody else. I love being able to work for set my own hours, decide what is important, and actually go towards that goal. Um, I guess what really was the influencing factor is I was as Ken knows, I lost both my parents the previous 2 years. And that really had a big mental impact on me, especially in my desire to make content. And I was really questioning that. And that opportunity arose with Mr. Beast, and I was like I'm already like sort of demotivated. Maybe I will find motivation in this area as well. Now, granted, this is a great opportunity, but that was one of the, I guess, the big factors to answer your question was one of the big factors in me deciding to do that. Yes, it was a great opportunity, but really, I was in like a depressed state, and I didn't know really what I wanted to do if I wanted to even continue YouTube. And so I felt like this was a good little hiatus to actually try out. And one of the things that I learned, like during that experience, like I'm so glad that I did it, even though I didn't continue on with them. So glad I did it because obviously I was working with data on there, and it really just I'm getting like tingles just talking about it. It really just reinvigorated me whenever I went there and I was working with data and being able to work with everybody else and seeing how excited they were on the team about working with data and actually learning about data. And as YouTubers, sometimes, right, we don't actually physically see our audience, especially me. Like I'm living by myself up here in Arkansas, and so I only see comments and stuff like that. But I was working in person there, and to actually see the excitement of people and of the excitement of what they could glean from these data insights and how they could actually apply it, and we could use it to grow Mr. Beast's brand. It was motivating. And then it was just like, okay, well, there's obviously still a need for this, and I still love YouTube, and so that's why I decided to continue doing YouTube after that.
That's such a unique insight that, especially when we're working alone, I'm all the way in Hawaii. I live with my girlfriend, but that's the generally the most human interaction I get around data, or I mean, she's not involved with data. I don't really get any around data or podcasting.
I try to talk to my girlfriend about
Yeah.
ChatGPT sometimes, and she just makes fun of me. ChatGPT, d. Like, you're always talking about this. So yeah, I know what you're saying.
You should just talk with ChatGPT about ChatGPT. That's probably
Yeah.
the best option. I think that you can actually talk to it now, so
Right,
why not,
exactly.
right?
She'll always have questions, and I'll bring it up, and I'll like just chat it in front of her and be like, "This is the answer." So sorry to interrupt.
Love that. No, but that is a really interesting observation. Is people, even if we're introverted, people are inherently social. People inherently, at least I do, get motivation and energy from being around other motivated people. And that's something that I've been missing here. I made this episode a little while ago talking about moving to Austin. And something I realized there is my network of people that I can have these fun, exciting conversations where I'm feeding off of their motivation and their energy. That's a huge driving force for me. Whenever I'm around people like that, whenever I have some of those conversations, even a conversation like this, I'm supercharged for the next day, for the next week, whatever it is. But in my life now, I maybe have one of those conversations a week because of the podcast or some of these other things. And if you're around other people, whether it's a meetup, whether it's some of these other events, and you can schedule those, you can create this energy or this motivating factor from other people. And that
Yes.
is something I didn't appreciate until recently, where I think everyone who works by themselves has some lulls and dips and things aren't going as well as you wanted, but you can feed off of other people's energy. You know, if something's going
Yes.
well for you or for Tina or for, for example, Alex is doing his analyst builder and things like that. Talking to them, I get to feed off of that energy. I got to say, oh my goodness, not if they can do it, I can do it too. But, you know, maybe this is like wishy-washy or whimsical or magical, but there's something that, at least for me, I can pull out of their success and their positive energy that I can integrate into my own life. And even if it's the other side where it's like, oh, if he can do it, I can, I have to be able to do it. That's also a
Yes.
powerful force. Probably not as one is quite as good to tap into, but
Yeah. No,
athletes do it all the time.
I can very much relate to that. And even, I talked about, I want to work for myself and do my own goals and do my own problems. But even just seeing, like, when you work on like a problem for like a boss or somebody or another friend, and the excitement that solving that problem or giving them an answer can give them, it's motivating in itself, even if it isn't directly aligned with your goals. It's a motivation.
Yeah. And for better or for worse, I don't think I've ever had that feeling in an office with other people where we're all completely aligned and excited about pursuing
Yes.
some unified goal.
Right.
But if you can do that in a small company, you can do that for yourself, you can do that around your friends. There's some weird manic energy that I think is very, very powerful.
Yes.
And I'm looking to harness a lot more of that next year when I'm around more. I will hopefully see more of you. I'll hopefully see more of my friends
You'll
that
be
are
in the
on the
mainland. Yeah,
mainland.
you will.
Yeah.
You'll be
It's an 8
what,
hour
5
drive
hours?
from,
Oh
it's
yeah,
only 5. I can't
5 hours.
remember.
Yeah, when we did the road trip, right? Wasn't it 5 hours? Or no, it was 8 hours, wasn't it? Yeah, it was 8 hours.
It felt like no time because I was having so
Right,
much
no, it
fun
was.
with my friends.
We had too much fun in Buc-ee's.
Oh yeah. We so for those that don't know, we took Tina to Buc-ee's. It was the first time. I
Yeah,
actually had never been in a Buc-ee's either, and
uh,
it was a very cultural experience for her.
yeah,
And for those that don't know what Buc-ee's is, they're these giant gas stations with hundreds of pumps, and it's like a Walmart in there. It's crazy. It's a very, very nuts experience.
yes,
So that was an interesting tangent sidebar, but I'm interested in maybe what you learned. Obviously, you can't talk about the specifics of tooling or anything like that, but what you learned coming out of that experience, and how did that change your content or your perspective, whether on YouTube or on life, after leaving? And
yeah.
also, you talked a little bit about why you left, but any additional thoughts on that is also relevant here.
Yeah, I guess the major insight that I got from that was Jimmy, who's the main
Who
who
is
is
Mr.
Mr.
Beast?
Beast. He's a genius, probably like a Steve Jobs, if you will. But he was smart enough to actually bring in people around him that he knew could do a better job than him. And so they got multiple teams working there. And that was the major insight that I took away from this, is the power of teamwork. Prior to that experience, everything involved in my channel was me doing every single aspect, and I took pride in it. And I was like, well, I can't put something out unless it's coming directly from me and I ideated and I generated it. And that also led to a lot of burnout and a lot of frustration during that. So that working on a team and being able to see the power of actually outsourcing certain steps was one of the major things that I took from it. And I've done a lot of things now where now I have an editor help me with some of the videos. Not all the videos I'm editing, still the main channel videos, but like editing the videos for my courses. And then I also have somebody else helping me out with ideation and help me with ideas. And the ROI of having other people around me, one, motivating me and keeping me to a schedule, is like one benefit. But the second is I get to actually make more content and actually please the audience. So there's just so many benefits and so many great insights that I got from that experience and being able to see the power of a team and how you can actually grow with the help of other people.
Let's take a second to hear from one of our amazing sponsors that supports the show. Ever wonder how to keep your AI models not just smart, but responsible and effective? That's why I've partnered with Aporia. Their AI performance platform offers full-scale observability and real-time AI guardrails. Trust me, if you're in the data science field, Aporia's got your back. Don't miss out. Check them out at aporia.com. This episode of Kansas Nearest Neighbors is brought to you by Z by HP, HP's high compute, workstation-grade line of products and solutions. Z is specifically made for high-performance data science solutions, and I personally use the ZBook Studio and the Z8 workstation. I really love that the Z workstations can come standard with Linux or WSL2, and they can be configured with the Data Science Software Stack Manager. With the Software Stack Manager, you can get right to the work of doing data science on day one without the overhead of having to completely reconfigure your new machine. Now back to our show. I think that one is a prerequisite for the other, though. So, for example, Mr. Beast, he knew the whole process through and through. He could do every aspect of it. Yourself, you did the whole thing, so
Right.
you knew you could delegate and what looked like good work or what type of people would be able to fill certain roles. I know a lot of people that delegate without doing the stuff themselves. And in some sense, I sort of did that with admin work where I'm just bad at admin. Oh, I'm going to outsource this and still be bad at it because I don't know how to create structure or create a good framework for whoever I'd be hiring. But
Mm-hmm.
that is a big epiphany that I've had as well, is that sometimes you have to own the whole process, do everything in order to hire the right people, because otherwise you just get something that isn't a high quality work. And I got really
Yes.
lucky with my editor, Tony, where we've been working together for a long time. He knows me really well. He knows what my expectations are, but there's also, he's a better editor than I'll ever be. And he also has some creative elements that I wouldn't have thought of, and it makes it so that the content is better than it would have been before. I think my content still needs to level up quite a bit, but it's easier to do that now that you have a sounding board or that you have additional feedback loops in place.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely growing pains, but completely to your earlier point, if you haven't done it yourself, and I find that too, like if I haven't gone through the process and actually know how to do it myself with the step-by-step process, I can't really expect somebody else to give me what I want. That's what I need. So like, it's definitely a needed part of the process.
Yeah, even with data science, software engineering, these types of things, I think that plays a pretty important role too. In order to make it so someone else can do it, you have to create documentation. And if you're doing things without documentation, if you're doing things because you don't necessarily, you're sort of going by the seat of your pants, it's harder for you to do it and replicate it, but it's also harder for someone else to do it. And I'm still not good at that. That's something I'm really trying to work on improving, which is a very aggressive uphill battle. But I didn't really appreciate the need for it until I started
Mm-hmm.
doing more things myself or trying to outsource things.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So a lot of your more recent content has been about AI, mine as well. I think most of the people in the space, I wouldn't say that, at least for me, I would hope that I'm not chasing something flashy
Right.
or I mean,
Crypto.
realistically, yeah, the videos that I make on AI actually get less viewership than my other ones,
Same.
but I'm genuinely interested in how this changes my life, my work, and what are the limitations and those types of things. I think it's the type of content that you're producing now is very interesting. I would imagine it's aligned in the same way where you see this changing how you work and what being a data analyst, what being a YouTuber, what any of this means. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Like, what does the AI movement right now mean to you?
Yeah, I think it's just going to change the landscape. And I love this story that I was reading an article the other day about Excel back in, I think it was back in the 70s. So previously, accountants had to manually go through and with a paper spreadsheet, a piece of paper, they had to like physically go through and actually write down line by line items and use a calculator to calculate it. Seems very barbaric. And then with the onset of spreadsheet software, specifically Microsoft Excel, people were able to now use these computers. And I think there was a lot of, I mean, even during the time of that time, there's a lot of negative perception, like all these people are going to lose their jobs and they're going to be out without jobs. And I think, I mean, a lot of similarities we can get today from this story. But instead, as we've seen with accountants, like accountants are actually pretty still common, and they're just using Excel now, and they're just more efficient and more speedier, if you will. Well, some accountants. Shout out to my accounting forever. Uh, but they're able to streamline a lot of their tasks, and so I think we need to look at the past if we want to see the future, and I think a lot of similarities can be drawn to that. But I think a lot of people are concerned with some of the negativity around AI, and um, that it's going to take their job, which rightful so. They're afraid it's going to take their jobs, or is it going to take over the world? And I definitely think we need to have a cautious eye on that, and we need to be monitoring it. But I mean, seeing how electronic spreadsheets shape the world to where we are today, like imagine how AI can shape how we do data analytics into the future. And that's how I sort of frame it in my mind and think we need to be paying attention to it. And that's why I'm making content on it. And similar to you, views aren't on it as good, but I enjoy like researching and keeping an eye on it. And I think we're doing a service to everybody else by putting out that content on it so that way they stay aware about it.
I think studying historic trends is really important and a very interesting thing. I've pitched this podcast forever in the last probably 5 episodes. I listen to the Founders podcast a lot,
Yeah.
and he's constantly comparing historic trends, past trends to what's happening more recently. I mean, a good example is looking at the comparison between, Costco and, for example, Amazon.
Yeah.
Like Jeff Bezos deals directly from Sam Walton, from the creator of Costco, from all these different people. And it played out in the exact same way in just a different market than those other box wholesale retailers, membership stores. And to me, looking at that Excel example and projecting it forward to how AI is looking, I don't see it happening that different. Yes, we can worry about the jobs, we can worry about the capabilities of AI doing more of our work. But at the end of the day, there would be no jobs or there would be dramatically less jobs available if the market was efficient. But there's not a single market that I know of that is efficient.
Right.
There's asymmetric information at every step. Every company operates differently. And because the marketplace is so fragmented like that, because it's so lumpy, some are more advanced in terms of their data analytics capabilities or their people or the technology they use, or some are really behind and they won't adopt in this way. That the landscape, although it'll probably gradually change over time, one. And it doesn't mean that there aren't going to be jobs that are very human heavy. There aren't going to be jobs that are relevant for these specific use cases with hybrid AI and humans. And because there's more data than ever, there's still going to be a lot of opportunities to do data analysis, even if it is with a co-pilot like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or any of these new tools. So that to me was something I've realized more recently, is that the markets we operate in are just unbelievably inefficient, and there's more opportunity for work in these types of things than we ever believed possible. We forget how freaking big the world is and how many jobs there are.
Yes.
It's pretty ridiculous to think that we'd all change and adopt something at the same time and have the same success and replace all these roles, because that's just not how things work historically,
Right.
or ever. So how have these tools changed how you work? That to me is a big one. I've talked in past episodes about how I'm using ChatGPT, but I'm interested in your experience, especially someone who I think is a pretty aggressive early adopter.
So previously, I think sometimes people think, especially junior people new to data analytics, they probably think like, oh, Luke's up there and he never goes to Google. And I have two monitors right here. And I would literally, anytime I'm doing any product, I'd have Google open on one side and I'd have my project working up on the other. And that was my workflow previously. I would hit a problem, just go to Google, and Google, as you're aware, you have to dive into it. It's not always the best answer. You have to search through forums sometimes, but you get to the answer. But that process of that iterating process is necessary. And even like expert analysts and expert programmers have to do that. Now it's just completely changed it to where I run into this problem. one, I can use something like ChatGPT, which is great, and I can input the question in there still in a separate window, but it's a little bit of faster response. Or something like I was coding my datanerd.tech website, which is like built on a Python Streamlit, and I've never worked with Streamlit before. And I was using inside of VS Code GitHub Copilot. And now I don't even have to go to I don't even need two monitors. I can stay within my same monitor, and it's guessing the code for me as I'm going along. And I could not have built that app. Like I couldn't have done it if I did not have the help of that. I couldn't. If I would have had Google, I maybe would have figured it out, but it would have taken me like a year to figure it out. With that thing, I was able to code this thing in a month of something I've never done before. And so I think for that example right there is really great for somebody like a junior analyst or something that's moving into some sort of field or wants to use maybe Python or something that they don't have familiarity with. Now you have an even easier way to access knowledge through the use of these different tools, and you can learn something that much quicker. Sorry, I'm going on a ramble now, but that like I used to, whenever I was learning Python, I would just get so frustrated. I mean, I know you can feel the same, Ken. You just run into so many issues like print statements. Like, why is this print statement not working?
Parentheses.
Yeah. Forgot parentheses. And you're just like, you don't know because you don't have somebody like an expert. And now you have like pretty much like an expert sitting right next to you. And so the amount of frustrated moments I have now compared to earlier is just, it's just, I mean, if I had a graph it, it's just going down along with speeding up my work. So it's just like it's a win-win.
I think we're going to see I view this as two ways. So the barrier to entry, just as you described, the barrier to entry is lower. So for you building a more difficult project, something more complex that you haven't had exposure to, becomes more attainable. I have a friend who's technical. He's a movie director, and he's technical. He's built some websites and those types of things, but he's not a programmer by any stretch of the imagination. And he was able to build a pretty intensive web scraper and a cool application because now the bar is moved. So he's just technical enough that he can build these things. You know, he has to figure out how to run a Python script and what IDE to use and those types of things, which he can do. But then the coding becomes more accessible. And we're starting to move that line slowly and slowly towards less technical people. And I don't necessarily view that as a bad thing. That means people can build more stuff that they think is useful and cool. Yeah, maybe there's going to be bugs, but everyone who's ever coded, I think, would agree that coding is iterative, right? We build on what we do. It's better to have something, even if it's poorly written, than to not have anything at all.
Yep.
And I love seeing more people being able to access this skill that I think is transformative in our lives. I mean, the idea that we can see something and have a vision and be able to build it is one of the coolest things. That inherently is the gift that humans have compared to any other animal, in my opinion. Right? Even if we're building little yurts to protect us, or a fence to keep predators out, or to keep our livestock in, that is what makes us human. And having more people be able to do that in a digital age or in a digital way is unbelievable to me. And then what you said about speeding things up is also a huge change for me as well, is that I don't have to, I have a guide or someone to get feedback off of, rather than having to do this just like research and then copy and paste and iterate.
Yes.
I personally think, and this was kind of a weird take that I've had from, I think it was on Luis's podcast, but the nature of ChatGPT to hallucinate, I view it more as a feature than a bug. So if I'm taking code from ChatGPT, then when I review it, I have to think critically about it because I know it won't guaranteed be right.
Right.
That to me is the same way I would do something in Google and I get the same benefit out of it. But it is that last little catch to say, okay, I know that there could be something wrong with it. So it makes me want to adjust it and learn it and make sure I understand the mechanisms that are working so that when I plug it in, it works. If ChatGPT was correct more often, then I wouldn't know what half the code that I write looks like or how it works.
Right.
because I would
Uh-huh.
be too
Oh no,
trusting of it. And
you're
so,
literally just like
yeah,
copy paste, and it's like I don't know what's going on here, but it's working, and that's
yeah,
dangerous.
and I agree 100%. And so I personally have sort of had a paradigm shift where I'm viewing those hallucinations, the errors in it, as this feature, and I think that's amplified my own ability to code, but also my ability to sort of pair program with ChatGPT. And we don't assume the code that our peers write is always correct.
Right.
So why would we assume that ChatGPT is always correct? And pair programming, working with other developers, is a very common practice. It's a good practice. You get to review their work and those types of things, and they review your work. Well, now we have an automated way to do that that has more expansive knowledge or more examples than any person that I've ever met before.
Yeah. I mean, I like to look at it as I frame ChatGPT as like my little intern, my little data nerd intern. And well, you can't always trust interns. So if you've had an intern before, they're going to make mistakes, and it just keeps you on your toes. But you got to provide in the right direction. Um, and with your friend example that you just pointed out of how he did it, that reminds me of my first like data analytics project that I did back in college. And I was doing it on CrossFit, an analysis of some CrossFit stuff, and it was from a table in a website. And dude, I had to go through because I wanted this data, and I had to go through and copy and paste it over into Excel. Formatting was all jacked up. I spent more time with that data analytics project copying, pasting over that code and correcting stuff than I spent actually analyzing the data. And now I just think of like ChatGPT. I can easily just give it that web page and say, "Hey, extract out that information, and let's move on." And it sort of makes me upset right now that I didn't have it back then.
Yeah. Well, I think that that's also good for longevity in our careers because there's a lot of stuff, menial stuff that I don't really enjoy doing. Writing SQL queries, doing those sorts of things doesn't really do it for me. Some people love it.
Yeah,
Totally fine. Right.
yeah, that's awesome for them.
But yeah, I was using your nerd.tech stuff to make a video I made a little while ago about sort of the trends in the job market. And I wrote all the queries using ChatGPT. I just fed in the list of tables. I said, "Hey, here's what's in them. Here's the schema," and it did a pretty good job. For me to really index in that skill and find joy in it, it just wouldn't be there, and it got me to doing the stuff that I enjoy dramatically quicker.
Right.
And that's what we hope to do with outsourcing. That's what we hope to do in everything in our lives. At least for me, is
Right.
spend as much time doing the things that we love and as little time doing the things that we don't like. I mean, that would be a perfect, fulfilling career. I mean, as long as we were still challenged in those types of things, that is a very undersold benefit of using an AI technology like this.
Yes. No, I'm completely aligned with you because it's like I love data analytics. I do love coding, but I love data analytics more. And I would love to be able to spend more time doing data analytics than trying to figure out like why my for statement isn't executing properly.
Yeah. That's an interesting perspective. So I used to love coding. I think as I've developed more and I've diversified my interests, I still love coding if it's all I'm doing, because then it's a skill practice that I'm pursuing and trying to get better at. But now where I'm coding less and coding is purely functional and it's not exploratory and it's not me trying to learn the systems better or do things more elegantly or find optimizations, I've had a lot harder time of really enjoying it. And that's something that I think a lot of people face in their career is, you become a data science manager or you change your career role and then you're doing less coding and you're doing more mentorship or you're doing some of these other things. At least for me, the coding became dramatically less fun because it wasn't something that I was like honing as a skill anymore. And that's something I still have to wrestle with because do I want to stop coding? No, I when I get into the zone, I enjoy it and there's utility in it. It
Mm-hmm.
allows me to build whatever I want to build. But I also get that, I mean, just like anyone else, imposter syndrome where, man, I can't do this as well as I used to anymore. I used to know this. This used to be so easy. This is such a simple problem. And I really struggle with that transition now is, I'm probably more a content creator or a data leader or a strategy person than I am a pure engineer anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
I still don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with it. I think that programmer's not in our like they're not the primary title that I would like refer to myself as. Like that's lower on the list. Like we want to actually do something with that programming capability.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I would like to describe myself as more of an entrepreneur or a producer or a creator. Doesn't necessarily have to be content or anything along those lines, but I get tremendous pride from putting things into the world that other
Yes,
people get value from. Whether it's a
yes,
YouTube, a podcast, a tool, a website, it doesn't matter what it is. That's a core motivator for me. And that's something I've had to realize more recently is that, oh, it doesn't have to be code. It doesn't have to be data. It can be,
hmm
but there's something to that broader picture that uh, I guess we all learn as we go.
yeah, exactly. I'm figuring that out too as well. I'm completely aligned with that.
So, what are your thoughts on all of these different AI agents that are out there? So, we have ChatGPT, we have Claude, we now have Gemini. What is going to be the difference maker? What is going to be the factor that determines which of these is the most heavily used or is
Yeah,
most useful to people?
yeah. Well, I think one in general, this is a good thing. We're seeing like everybody's questioning ChatGPT, and especially when it was released and it was sort of a one of a kind thing. Those other now Google, Amazon, and obviously Microsoft backs OpenAI, but you got the major three actually trying to release a similar product with it. Amazon having their queue. I think in general it helps solidify or helps uh, it helps basically make it like this is like obviously like OpenAI is onto something with this. And two, the more important thing with all these different companies, I think competition's just good in general. Whenever you have competition going on, I think us as the consumers are going to now win. Um, Now interacting with these different chatbots, I don't really, it's like switching from like Python to R to Julia. There's sometimes a big difference, but whenever you're switching between some of these chatbots, I'm not really, as far as their capabilities, I'm noticing. But as far as what prompts you actually have to provide and their capabilities, um, I'm not noticing as much of a difference. And I think that's even better for the consumer because now it makes it, well, which one is the better one? Which one is the better chatbot to per se go with?
I was
So yeah,
actually, sorry, go ahead.
no, that was it.
I was very, some people are making videos about how cool Gemini Ultra is and these types
Yeah,
of things. I was pretty underwhelmed by it. I thought that the performance gains over ChatGPT or GPT-4 were pretty modest, especially for a product for the Ultra version that's going to be coming out in a year. My thought is they'll probably have a GPT 4.5 or even
right.
GPT-5 or something else by then. This isn't this isn't impressive to me at all.
Yeah,
And especially if the the difference between these models is relatively sparse, maybe a couple percentile on these different tests, I would 100% be using the tools that I'm more comfortable with, as
hmm
well as the ones that I like the user interface of more. I've
right.
said this before. I think the biggest differentiator between any of these tools was the UI. ChatGPT did a really good job of building a UI that's intuitive, easy to use. And shoot, what was the Google one before this? It was
Bard, Bard that
yeah,
implemented
Bard
Gemini.
was had terrible UI. Claude has
Yeah,
decent UI, uh, and they're trying to angle in a different way. And I think I've used Claude. I wouldn't say a ton, but definitely second most after ChatGPT. And that is the differentiation for me. Is for
hmm
the tasks that I'm using it for, does it get close? And again, how does it fit into the ecosystem that I've built to use it? How did you
yeah.
feel about that Gemini
Yeah,
announcement?
yeah. The Gemini announcement. Well, there's a little bit of heat going on right now as we're filming this with some of the like you said, leading into the Ultra. Ultra is the premier model of Gemini right now. They have Pro available inside of Google Bard, but Ultra. some of the videos were a little misleading in how they made it seem like this Ultra was available now to actually use and what were the capabilities. And I'm I'm very much aligned with what you're saying. I'm a little underwhelmed by it. I think it's good because I think they're like we need to have competition to ChatGPT, and it doesn't need to be a sole player. But it's not. I don't think it's there yet, and they need to do more.
Yeah, I'm really curious as to what the impact of the sort of lack of truthfulness is going to have associated with Google. They
Yeah,
messed up their early Bard stuff. The answers that they had
yeah,
were, it was either wrong or it was just
yeah. It was
a
a
fumble
wrong
with
answer that
marketing.
they did in a major press release, and it was like, oh
Yeah.
gosh, you should have fact checked this before releasing this.
Yeah. And then there's this little one with Gemini and the inaccuracies there. I mean, how do you build trust
Yeah.
in a organization or company when you keep doing this? It seems
Yes.
like I don't know if they're trying to move too fast or what it is, but
Right.
it's not like this Gemini stuff had to be done right now. It's
Hmm.
not like releasing this now or in a month from now would have had any implication on how or when people used it. I'm just so baffled by the decision making and the lack of nuance that Google has had here.
Yeah, I'm really it's very unlike Google because Google in general is a very slow moving. I mean, it's a giant company, right? It's a very slow moving company, and they're very meticulous and slow how they roll out things. But I feel like in this, where we need this consumer trust in these AI technologies, they're sort of dropping the ball on this. And these type of things, like, and also with like the Sam Altman fired from OpenAI. So like, it's not just Google. These type of things are going to unfortunately cause a degradation where we already have people questioning questioning the use of AI, and now you have these type of events. It's really going to question the consumer thoughts on this type of product. So I think companies got to be a lot more careful with this.
Yeah, I was, talking about the Sam Altman stuff. I haven't paid a whole lot of attention. I know he
Yeah.
obviously was forced out, and then he got a job at Microsoft, and then they took him back and they restructured the board and all these things. But to me, that doesn't make me feel confident about these companies. I think the future of AI is that it's going to continue to innovate no matter what. But the largest player having this much confusion about who's running it tells me that not necessarily the right motives are always at play. And to me, that is the scariest thing about AI is that it's going to be in the hands of the wrong people, that the people that are pushing it are not necessarily going to be ethical. They're going to be making claims that are unrealistic, or they're going to be taking data that they shouldn't be, or they're going to be cutting corners in the places that they aren't. And I don't think any of the companies are really showing me that they're fit to do a good job to handle this incredibly powerful force.
Right. Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, especially with like AGI, artificial general intelligence, like potentially on the cusp of like being developed. Yeah, no, I'm 100% online as well with that. And I don't know how you battle it other than building in public and just being as transparent as possible and being open to when you make mistakes. I think that's the only way. But I mean, open source, right? The open source community is big for a lot of things, like especially like Linux and stuff like that. Um, if there's some way to actually do this more in public with an open source forum, and I think there's a lot of issues with making some of these technologies open source and the concerns with getting in the wrong hands. But if there were going to be some sort of hybrid approach, I think that'd be the only way to potentially uh, build up and make sure that we have this consumer trust.
Yeah, it seems like Meta is the only company that's really doing that, and it's weird that
Yeah.
in a small way Meta is the good guy. I mean, I think it
Yeah.
was some of the stuff was leaked, and then they got good press, and they decided to say, "Hey, this is good. We'll keep doing that."
Right.
But what do you think about their approach? Have you been paying attention? I think they released something like Emu that's very video focused. They're not really playing the large language model game in the same way that Google and Microsoft are, and even Amazon are. Do you think that that's a good idea, a bad idea?
I mean, I love what their approach is doing. You don't hear as much about them in the news, unfortunately, especially with their things. So I haven't been paying as much attention to them. But anything they're doing to open source it, I think it's great. I love that Facebook has been known to release some of their technologies as open source, um, and so I hope that they continue it and that other companies take note of this and follow the same lead.
Yeah, I also think we're sort of wrapped in like a large language model craze right now.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be some really cool advancements and possibly scary advancements in video, advancements in image related stuff that are probably going to change our lives more than even large language models do.
Yeah.
And I'm interested in the people that are not necessarily playing the race, because AI is a race to the bottom, in my opinion, right? We're going to get there eventually. We're going to get to some AGI, and then it's not going to matter anymore. And all these
Mm-hmm.
companies have spent all this money, and they're going to be the only ones that are players because they're the only ones that have the funds to be able to associate with this. I mean, open source, any individual companies who are trying to create these models, they simply cannot compete compared to the firepower of these other companies. And so what, maybe it's a sad thing, but it's sort of like, what is the point of competing in this space when maybe other frontiers you really can compete in and you can develop and innovate? And I mean, that's one of the things that also scares me about AI in general right now, is that it's one of the few things where I don't feel as though open source can compete because it's the collective power of people. But as
Right.
an individual, as a private enterprise, it's really difficult to be. This is There's too big of a moat in terms of compute for any person to be able to create a business associated with that. I mean, right
Mm.
now, in theory, I could compete even with like Amazon, right? If
Right.
I have an online store and I'm selling something, I'm in some form of competition with them,
Yeah. But
and
you could
I
dominate
could,
the local market potentially. Yeah.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but I have access to that type of competition. In AI, you know, you just don't have the same type of access to scale, which is a very interesting. Maybe that's not the best one because I guess you know you're very limited in your local market, but there's other facilitators, there's other things that you would need. But I digress. So what can we do, Luke? Can we learn to work with the machines? Can we learn to collaborate and make ourselves more productive? Is that our only option here? Is to adopt these to survive?
Well, I think it's like my mama said: if you can't beat them, join them. Uh, no, but I think that the what we talked about though of staying out and making sure that this is out in public, and also us, especially as content creators, whoever else, the news, the media, keeping an eye on it, and we're just working on it together. I think that's that what we can do and what has proved to be successful in the past for any of these type of things. So that's why I think I'm very privy on, well, we need to be learning it. We need to be understanding it. You need to be using it. You need to inform yourself about how these different tools works. And if you think that ChatGPT can take your job, have you been trying to use it for your job? Have you fed it a data analytics problem before and seen what the answers are giving you? Because I'm telling you, unless you're there to guide it, it's not going to do your job for you.
So, as I know that you produced a course related to ChatGPT and how you would use that in data analytics. I took your course. I really loved it. I think it's one of the best produced courses I've seen about any topic, but this one in particular is very interesting to me.
Thanks, man.
And I'm wondering if you could describe who this would be most useful for. I mean, I even found it useful as someone who is familiar with these tools, but I'm probably not the target audience. I took it because when I was
Yeah,
interested in two, you're a friend of
right,
mine.
exactly.
But I think that this really does point to, um, you know, whose lives are these tools going to change, and how do we acquire skills and knowledge around it? Because I think that that's something that's really missing. We talk so much about the tools, but very few people are talking about, in a hands-on approach, how do we integrate them?
Yep. Um, so I guess I'll start with this about the course real quick. The course itself, I've been obviously working with it. It's ChatGPT's and been out over a year. was using it in my job at Mr. Beast, was using it now, and have been acquiring, like been basically cataloging all the different things that it can do. So I put together over 6 hours of video content along with like 50 plus exercises, and then a final capstone project that you go and actually build a project with ChatGPT focused around data analytics. And who is it for? So it's for Ken G. I built it just for him. But besides that, the main, like I always think of like my YouTube when I first started it. It's for when I first started my journey. That my YouTube channel was when I first started my YouTube journey. It was to basically show people the things that I didn't know that was possible or that was able to be done in data analytics. And that's the same thing with this course. It's aimed at beginners, like somebody like me, that example that I gave where I was wanting to get that table off of a web page and I'm sitting there copy and paste it. And that's the majority of my time being spent. It's somebody like that doesn't know um, how to use, is not an expert in Excel, not an expert in Python, but wants to be able to actually do their jobs as a data analyst and get some help from this chatbot, ChatGPT. And so that's what it's really aimed at. And I have a lot of the beginning is focused on building the foundation up. If you have no insights into data analytics whatsoever, I'll actually walk you through all the steps in a data analytics process and how to actually use ChatGPT for those steps. And at the end, we actually build a project that you can showcase as experience of work that you've done with using ChatGPT to find some data insights.
Yeah, I've said this quite a lot, but I think the foundation of data analytics, the foundation of any of these systems is, in fact, building things. And my thought is that the sooner you can build things, the sooner they pay dividends for you. So the sooner you can build a portfolio, the sooner you get a job. The sooner you have access to programming languages, the sooner you can, write a script and run it, the sooner you can build something that saves you money or saves you time or gives you some sort of insight. And I look very much at what you've created as a way for people to get the skill of building things quickly, and that skill helps you to learn to program faster, right?
Yes.
If you're able to build something with Python, then you can start picking up how the code works to be able to build
Right.
that thing. You can start integrating everything together. Helps you potentially land a job if that's what you're interested in, because you could build things and you could showcase them and you could tell stories about them. And it can help you on the other side. If you're already a programmer or a builder, it can help you to understand how these new technologies work. From watching your course, I learned quite a few things about how ChatGPT works and can be most optimized for data analytics that I didn't know before. I mean, you use the plugin Notable, which I think is really cool, which allows you to integrate with GitHub, which allows you to do these other things. And we're not sponsored by Notable. I would love for them to sponsor us,
Yeah.
either the podcast or Luke. But it's a very interesting to see when someone has had so much experience using this on the job, what you pick out versus, I use ChatGPT on the job a little bit, but not in the same capacities that you've been doing. So I was really very pleasantly surprised with what you created. And I love being able to share what you're working on with the audience here.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah. No,
Any,
I guess to add,
go ahead.
I guess to add to that, what you were saying earlier, I really see this as how can you, I would, what I would hate is somebody would love data analytics, wants to get into data analytics, and then they have this tool and they think they have to learn Python, and then they're spending all this time and getting frustrated, and maybe they don't even like to code. Or maybe they don't even like to use Excel or something like that. And that prevents them from getting into maybe doing data analytics as a barrier. And so I think that this ChatGPT is it's like a gateway, for lack of a better term, a gateway drug to get you in and actually be able to start working now, applying data analytics. And then exactly to your point, Ken, okay, you're digging into it and you're seeing that it's maybe going into some SQL or Python, and you enjoy maybe that. Maybe you're like, oh, I really like this SQL. Now, okay, yes, I could highly recommend diving into that, learning SQL, spending the time to understand the basics of SQL. Like, I'm not saying this course is like the end of your data analytics journey. like this is a good beginning, and it can only go further once you start to learn and use other tools and how they integrate. But this helps basically speed up the process of getting into data analytics even faster.
Yeah, I look at, this is an analogy I sort of just thought of, so bear with me if it's not very good. But I look at ChatGPT in a very similar way that I look at for example, the video capabilities on an iPhone now. So all of those are monitored with AI. They make it so that the video you shoot is relatively good. And anyone can go now shoot with their phone and make essentially at least a YouTube quality video that would not be scoffed at. If you
Mm-hmm.
think back 10 years, if I wanted to make a video on almost any platform, I'd have to have it some sort of different device. It would have all these different settings. I'd have to like worry about the ISO and the frame rate and all the shutter speed and all these types of things and the aperture. And even if I had a little bit of experience to it, I might mess that up because the autofocus settings and these types of things weren't as good back then as well.
And you
And
still
so
got to edit it too,
yeah.
with probably
And
even
so
more
now you
barbaric
can go
software.
in precisely. So now you can go in with your phone and be able to do all these things. And some of the best YouTubers, some of the best content creators out there have shot exclusively on their phone for a
Yeah,
lot of their
Ryan
stuff.
Trahan does it all the time,
Yeah,
shooting with an iPhone exclusively. Doesn't need expensive equipment. It's amazing.
exactly. And that's the cool thing is that in order to do the stuff that you want to do, the coding or the parts of that process, just like we were talking about before with outsourcing, they don't have to be the bottleneck for that. And I think that that's one of the largest takeaways that I've had about anything that we're doing. I mean, identify the bottlenecks and figure out if you can automate them away. In the future, we're just going to automate even more and more things away. And data science, I think, will probably just be some form of quantitative problem solving.
Right.
And if you can do that, that's going to be still a very useful skill in anything you pursue.
Hmm. I think we're going full circle now because now we're going back to like me talking about hiring people to help me with my job. Like that's basically what ChatGPT can do. There's aspects of our jobs that we don't like to do that are just like automatable. We can give it to that.
Precisely. Soon you'll have 3 ChatGPT video editors working for you, and you'll be set.
I
If only.
mean, we laugh about
If
that,
only.
but yeah, I don't know. I
Who
mean,
knows?
I use AI to edit of some of my videos to cut out the takes and stuff like that. So I constantly mess up my audio and use an AI to fix my audio. So, yeah, it's so much good from it.
Amazing. Luke, you have any final thoughts, any words of wisdom? I'll link all of Luke's information and his course in the description and in the show notes as well for anyone that's interested in learning more about that.
Yeah, no, thank you, Ken, for having me on. I don't have anything else. It's a great conversation. Always, it's always. I'm an introvert, not like I don't really like talking with people, but I enjoy being with you. So anytime you want any other podcast, dude. So I was stoked whenever you sent me an invite earlier this week.
Yeah.
Asked want to be on. I'm like, yeah, I want to go on. Haven't been on forever.
Let's go, dude. I'm glad we got it in. Thank you so much again for coming on.
No problem at all.